The job posting appeared on a Wednesday afternoon, buried on the third page of a career website I'd been refreshing obsessively for weeks. Night security guard, Ashmore Museum of Natural History, $28 an hour. Overnight shift, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Must be comfortable working alone. Prior security experience preferred, but not required. $28 an hour was almost double what other security positions were offering. I applied immediately. The interview was scheduled for 9 p.m. on a Friday, which should have been my first warning sign. The Ashmore Museum was located in the old downtown district, a limestone building constructed in 1897. I'd never been inside, though I'd driven past it hundreds of times. It always looked closed, with heavy curtains drawn across the windows and a general air of abandonment. The front doors were unlocked when I arrived. I stepped into a marble lobby that smelled like old paper and floor polish. Display cases lined the walls, filled with rocks, minerals, and faded taxidermy. A reception desk sat empty, covered in a layer of dust. "Hello," I called out. My voice echoed off the high ceiling. "Back here," a woman's voice came from somewhere deeper in the building. "Follow the main hallway." I walked through a doorway into a long corridor lined with exhibit rooms. In the dim emergency lighting, I could see the silhouettes of displays, skeletons, dioramas, glass cases containing things I couldn't quite make out. The hallway ended at an office with a light on. The woman behind the desk was in her 60s, with steel gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. She wore a blazer that appeared to be from the 1980s and thick glasses that magnified her eyes. "I'm Dr. Patricia Holloway, the museum director," she said, not offering her hand. "You're here about the security position." "Yes, ma'am. I'm Marcus Chen. I sent my resume." "I know who you are." She gestured to a chair. "Sit." I sat, feeling like I was back in the principal's office. Dr. Holloway studied me in silence for a long moment. "Why do you want this job?" she asked finally. "I need the work. I have bills and student loans, and the pay is competitive." "The pay is high because the job is demanding." She leaned forward. "I'm going to be direct with you, Marcus. This museum has been closed to the public for 7 years. We maintain the collections, but we don't advertise, we don't take visitors, and we don't encourage attention. The night security position exists for one reason: to make sure nothing leaves the building after dark." "Nothing? You mean like thieves?" "I mean nothing." Her eyes locked onto mine. "The exhibits need to be monitored. Every hour, on the hour, you'll conduct a full walkthrough of the building. You'll check every room, every display, and you'll make sure everything is exactly where it should be. If anything is out of place, anything at all, you document it in the logbook and notify me immediately. Do you understand?" "Yes, but there are rules." She pulled out a laminated card and slid it across the desk. "You will follow these rules without exception. Break them, and you're fired. Or worse." I picked up the card. It listed 5 rules in bold typeface. Ashmore Museum Night Security Protocol. 1. Conduct hourly walkthroughs of all exhibit halls. Complete walkthrough must take no less than 45 minutes. 2. Never turn off the emergency lighting. If the lights go out, exit the building immediately and call Dr. Holloway. 3. If you see someone in the building, assume they are an intruder. Do not approach. Call the police from the security office. 4. If you hear voices, ignore them. They are not real. 5. The Natural History Hall, Room 7, must be checked last on every walkthrough. Do not enter this room before 3 a.m. I read the list twice. Rule 4. What do you mean the voices aren't real? Old buildings make noise, Dr. Holloway said. The heating system, pipes settling, wood expanding and contracting. Your mind will play tricks on you when you're alone. Don't let it. And Rule 5? Her expression didn't change, but something flickered behind her eyes. Room 7 contains our most valuable specimens. It's temperature-controlled on an automatic system that doesn't stabilize until after 3 a.m. Entering before then could damage the exhibits. It sounded like a lie, but I needed the job too badly to push back. When can I start? I asked. Tonight. You'll shadow our current guard for the first week, then you'll be on your own. She stood, signaling the interview was over. The job starts at 10 p.m. Don't be late. I met James at 9:45 p.m. He was in his 50s, with thinning hair and the tired eyes of someone who hadn't slept well in years. He led me to the security office, a small room near the front entrance, with a desk, a computer, and a wall of monitors showing feeds from security cameras throughout the building. You get used to it, James said, settling into the worn office chair. First few nights are rough, but after a while, it's just another job. Dr. Holloway mentioned rules. Follow them. Don't question them. Don't try to be clever. He pulled out a large logbook with a cracked leather cover. Every hour you write the time and initial here. Then you do your walkthrough. You've got a clipboard with a checklist. You mark off each room as you check it. Takes about 45 minutes if you're thorough. What am I checking for? James was quiet for a moment. Inconsistencies. Things that aren't where they should be. Movement. Movement? You mean like intruders? Sure, intruders. He didn't meet my eyes. Come on, I'll show you the route. We started in the geology wing, rooms full of rocks, crystals, and mineral samples. Everything was labeled with yellowed cards typed on an old typewriter. James moved quickly, barely glancing at the displays as he checked boxes on his clipboard. You don't actually look at the exhibits, I observed. I've seen them enough. He paused at the doorway to the next room. Advice, don't stare at them too long. Don't read all the labels. Just verify everything's in place and move on. Why? Because the more you look, the more you notice, and noticing is bad for your peace of mind. We moved through the paleontology wing next. This section was more impressive. Fossils mounted on the walls, reconstructed skeletons of prehistoric creatures, and a large ammonite spiral that dominated one display case. James moved faster here, his checklist marks becoming quick scribbles. In the marine biology hall, we passed an enormous glass tank built into the wall. It was empty now, the water long drained, but the interior was still decorated with fake coral and rocks. A placard read, Pacific Marine Life Exhibit, temporarily closed. What happened to the fish? I asked. They died 20 years ago. James kept walking. Don't look at the tank too long. Why not? He didn't answer. We went through anthropology, ancient civilizations, and entomology. Each room was darker than the last, lit only by emergency lights that cast long shadows across the displays. I started to notice something odd. In several rooms, the display cases had been positioned strangely, facing walls or corners rather than the walkways where visitors would have viewed them. Why are some exhibits turned around? I asked. Dr. Holloway's orders. Don't ask me why. I just work here." By the time we reached the 6th room, my nerves were fraying. There was something oppressive about the museum at night, something that went beyond the expected creepiness of old buildings after dark. The air felt thick, like the building itself was watching us. James checked his watch. 11:47 p.m. "Room 7 is locked until 3 a.m. We'll come back on the next round. For now, we return to the security office and wait for midnight." "That's it? That's it. 8 times a night, every night. You get an hour break at 2 a.m., but you stay in the building. No exceptions." Back in the security office, I watched the monitors while James filled out the logbook. Most of the camera feeds showed static views of empty hallways and exhibit rooms, but one camera, labeled Room 7, showed only a black screen. "Is that camera broken?" I pointed at the dead feed. "No, it's turned off until 3 a.m. "Why?" James finally looked at me directly. His expression was hollow. "Because you don't want to see what's in there before 3 a.m. Trust me on that." My first week shadowing James established a rhythm. We'd start the night in the security office, watching the feeds and making small talk. At 11 p.m., we'd begin the first walkthrough. Every hour after that, we'd repeat the route, checking the same displays, marking the same boxes. James taught me the specifics: how to check if display cases had been opened, small pieces of tape on the seams, which exhibits needed extra attention, the taxidermy animals in room 4, the tribal masks in room 5, and which areas had quirks that I should ignore, strange sounds from the ventilation, cold spots near certain displays, the feeling of being watched in the empty tank. But he never explained why we did things this way, why the elaborate checking system. Why couldn't we enter room 7 before 3 a.m.? Why were some display cases turned to face the walls? On my 3rd night, I decided to ask directly, "What's really going on here, James? Why all the secrecy?" He was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "You ever hear about the Ashmore expedition?" "No." 1924. Dr. Theodore Ashmore, the guy who founded this museum, led an archaeological expedition to Peru. They were excavating a pre-Incan site in the mountains, brought back over 200 artifacts. Most of them ended up in this building. Okay. 3 members of that expedition died within a year of returning. Different causes: accident, illness, suicide. Dr. Ashmore himself went insane, spent his last 5 years in an asylum, claiming the artifacts were alive and watching him. James adjusted his glasses. The museum tried to return the artifacts to Peru in the 1960s, but the Peruvian government refused to take them, said the site they came from was cursed, and the artifacts should never have been disturbed. That's just superstition. Maybe. But people kept dying. Curators, night guards, even visitors, always in strange ways, always after spending time near certain exhibits. He gestured around us. That's why they closed the museum. Too many incidents, too many questions. But they couldn't just abandon the building. That would draw even more attention. So they keep it staffed, keep the collections maintained, and try to contain whatever's in here. Contain what? Whatever Dr. Ashmore woke up when he stole those artifacts. Whatever's been growing stronger in this building for the past 100 years. I wanted to laugh, to dismiss it as the paranoid fantasy of a man who'd worked too many nights alone. But something about the way he said it, the exhaustion in his voice, made me believe him. "Why do you stay?" I asked. Same reason you're here. The money's good, and someone has to do it. He stood up, checking the time. Midnight. Time for the walkthrough. That night I paid more attention to the exhibits, really looked at them for the first time. And I started to see what James meant about noticing things. In the anthropology hall there was a display of ceremonial masks from various cultures. The card indicated there should be 12 masks. I counted 13. In paleontology, one of the dinosaur skulls was positioned slightly differently than I remembered from earlier walkthroughs. The angle had changed, as if it had turned to face the doorway. And in the marine biology hall, when I glanced at the empty tank, I could have sworn I saw something move in the shadows at the back, just for a second, then nothing. I mentioned none of this to James, but I started to understand why the checklist existed, why the hourly walkthroughs were necessary. We weren't just checking for intruders. We were checking to make sure the exhibits stayed where they belonged. On my 7th night, my last night, shadowing James before working solo, we finally entered room 7 at 3 a.m. The Natural History Hall was at the far end of the building, down a corridor that seemed longer than it should be. The door was heavy wood with 3 separate locks. James produced a key ring and began unlocking them one by one. "Stay close to me," he said. "Don't touch anything, don't read the placards. Just help me verify everything's in place and we leave." The door swung open and cold air rushed out. The temperature inside room 7 was at least 20 degrees colder than the rest of the museum. Our breath came out in visible puffs. The room was large, with high ceilings and no windows. Display cases lined the walls, and larger exhibits stood on pedestals in the center of the room. Emergency lighting cast everything in a sickly green glow, but it was the exhibits themselves that made my stomach clench. They were all from the Ashmore expedition. Pre-Incan artifacts, ceremonial objects, carved stone figures with features that were almost human but not quite right. The proportions were wrong, limbs too long, heads tilted at uncomfortable angles, mouths open in expressions that might have been screams or laughter. 47 pieces, James muttered, consulting his checklist. "We count them. Make sure the number is right. Don't look at them directly if you can help it." We moved through the room systematically. James called out numbers, and I verified them against the checklist. But with each item we counted, I felt increasingly uneasy. The artifacts weren't just creepy museum pieces. There was something actively wrong about them, something that made my skin crawl and my head ache. One piece in particular drew my attention, despite my efforts to avoid it. A stone figure about 2 feet tall, depicting a humanoid creature with too many joints in its limbs. Its face was a mass of carved eyes, dozens of them, covering every surface of the head. The placard read, "The Watcher, ceremonial figure, purpose unknown, circa 800 AD. "Don't stare at it," James snapped. I jerked my gaze away, but it was too late. I'd looked long enough to notice something impossible. One of the stone eyes had blinked. "Did you see?" "No, I didn't see anything. Neither did you." James grabbed my arm. 47 pieces, all accounted for. We're done." We left room 7 quickly, James locking all 3 locks behind us. Back in the hallway, the temperature returned to normal, but I was still shaking. "That thing moved," I said. "The stone figure, its eye." "Didn't happen. Your mind played a trick on you. Old stone, weird lighting. You imagined it." But James's hand trembled as he wrote in the logbook. "This is why we don't enter room 7 until 3 a.m. The exhibits are more active earlier in the night. After 3 a.m. they're calmer, easier to manage." Active? James, these are just objects, stone and clay. They can't be active. He looked at me with something like pity. Your first solo shift is tomorrow night. You'll learn. They all do. My first night alone in the museum was on a Wednesday. James had quit without notice. I found out when I arrived and saw Dr. Holloway waiting in the security office. James is no longer with us, she said simply. You're ready to take over. What happened to him? He decided the position wasn't a good fit. Her tone made it clear the subject was closed. You know the protocols. You know the rules. Follow them precisely, and you'll be fine. She left, and I was alone. The first few hours were manageable. I sat in the security office, watching the monitors, waiting for 11 p.m. to start the first walkthrough. The building was quiet, except for the usual sounds, heating system, pipes, the occasional creak of old wood. At 10:47 p.m., I heard footsteps in the hallway outside the office. I sat up, listening. They were deliberate, unhurried footsteps, moving from left to right past the security office door. I checked the monitors. All the hallways were empty. The footsteps passed by again, this time moving right to left. Still nothing on the cameras. I remembered Rule 3. If you see someone in the building, assume they are an intruder. But I hadn't seen anyone. I'd only heard them. The footsteps stopped directly outside my door. I stared at the doorknob, waiting for it to turn. But nothing happened. After a minute of silence, I stood up and checked the hallway. Empty. No one there. No signs that anyone had been there. I returned to the office, my heart pounding. Rule 4 came back to me. If you hear voices, ignore them. They are not real. Nothing about footsteps, but maybe the same logic applied. At 11 p.m., I started my first solo walkthrough. The route was familiar now. 6 rooms, checking displays, marking boxes. Everything seemed normal until I reached the paleontology wing. The dinosaur skull I'd noticed before, the one that had seemed to turn, was definitely facing a different direction. I checked the checklist for my last shift with James. In the notes section, he'd drawn a small diagram showing the skull facing left. Now it was facing right, toward me. I marked it on my clipboard. Skull repositioned. Direction change noted. Then I continued the walkthrough, trying to ignore the feeling that the empty eye sockets were following me as I left the room. The marine biology hall was worse. As I passed the empty tank, I heard water, not dripping or leaking, actual moving water, like something swimming through it. I forced myself to look. The tank was still empty, still dry, but the sound continued, clear and unmistakable. Something was moving through water that wasn't there. I walked faster. By the time I finished the walkthrough and returned to the security office, I was sweating despite the building's chill. I logged the time, 11:51 p.m. The skull and the tank, 2 anomalies in one round. At midnight, I called Dr. Holloway. She answered on the first ring. Report. I described what I'd observed. She listened without interrupting. The skull repositions occasionally, she said when I finished. Note it in the log, but don't be alarmed. As for the tank, ignore auditory hallucinations. The building is old. Sound travels in strange ways. This didn't sound like pipes or heating. Ignore it. Continue your duties. Call me only if something leaves its display case or if you see actual movement. She hung up. I sat in the security office watching the monitors until the next walkthrough at midnight. Then 1 a.m., then 2 a.m., Each time I noticed new details. The 13th mask in anthropology was definitely new. I'd memorized the 12 original masks, and this one hadn't been there before. Its expression was different from the others, more animated, more alive. The tribal artifacts in room 5 had rearranged themselves. Spears that had been lying down were now propped upright. Shields faced outward instead of toward the walls. And in every room, I felt watched. Not by cameras or security systems, but by the exhibits themselves. At 2:55 a.m., I stood outside room 7, keyring in hand. This would be my first time entering alone. Part of me wanted to skip it, to pretend I'd done the check and falsify the log. But Dr. Holloway would know. Somehow, she'd know. I unlocked the 3 locks and opened the door. The cold air hit me immediately, but this time it felt different, aggressive, like the room was exhaling directly into my face. I stepped inside. The 47 artifacts from the Ashmore expedition were arranged as they'd been before. But something had changed. The atmosphere was different, heavier, more oppressive. The headache I'd felt on my first visit returned immediately, pounding behind my eyes. I started counting, moving quickly through the room. 1, 2, 3, 4. At number 23, I noticed the Watcher, the stone figure with dozens of carved eyes. Last time it had been facing the center of the room. Now it faced the door, faced me. I swallowed hard and continued counting. 24, 25, 26. At 31, I heard something that made me freeze. Breathing. Slow, raspy breathing that echoed off the walls. I looked around. I was alone. The room was empty except for the exhibits. The breathing continued, steady and patient. I finished counting as quickly as possible. 47 pieces, all accounted for, and practically ran from room 7. I locked the door behind me, my hand shaking so badly I could barely fit the keys into the locks. Back in the security office, I logged the time and noted all items accounted for in the logbook. I didn't mention the breathing. I didn't mention how the Watcher had moved. Some things, I was learning, were better left unwritten. The pattern continued. Every night, new anomalies. Small things at first, objects repositioned, sounds that shouldn't exist, the constant feeling of being observed. I documented what I could and ignored what I couldn't explain. The museum was testing me. I could feel it. On my 9th solo shift, I broke a rule. It was 2:30 a.m., and I was conducting my walkthrough. When I reached the marine biology hall, I stopped at the empty tank. The swimming sounds had become a nightly occurrence, and I'd been following Dr. Holloway's advice to ignore them. But tonight, something compelled me to look closer. I approached the tank slowly. The glass was thick, old-fashioned aquarium glass that distorted reflections. I put my face close to it, peering into the empty interior. For a moment I saw nothing, just the fake coral and rocks, dried and dusty. Then the water appeared. Not slowly, not fading in, just suddenly there, filling the tank, as if it had been there all along and I just hadn't noticed. And swimming through that impossible water was something that made my mind recoil. It was fish-shaped, but wrong. Too many fins, too many eyes, a mouth filled with teeth that curved inward. Its body was translucent, and through its skin I could see organs that pulsed with a sickly bioluminescence. It swam in a circle, then stopped and turned to face me. We made eye contact through the glass. Then it smiled. Not the way a fish would smile, that was impossible, but its mouth curved upward in an expression of pure malevolence, and I heard a voice in my head, clear as day. "You see me." I stumbled backward, nearly falling. When I looked at the tank again, it was empty, dry, no water, no creature, just an abandoned aquarium that hadn't held anything alive in 20 years. I ran back to the security office and locked myself inside. My hands were shaking, my heart pounded. I checked the monitor for the marine biology hall. The tank was clearly empty on the feed. But I knew what I'd seen. It had been real as anything else in this cursed building. I didn't report it to Dr. Holloway. What would I say? That I'd seen a monster in an empty tank? She'd fire me. Or worse, she'd tell me it was normal and I should ignore it. Instead, I did something stupid. I started researching. During my 2 a.m. break, instead of eating or resting, I used the security office computer to dig into the museum's history. The files were surprisingly accessible. Either no one had bothered to password protect them, or Dr. Holloway wanted them to be found. I discovered that James had been right about everything. Dr. Theodore Ashmore had led multiple expeditions to Peru between 1921 and 1924, focusing on pre-Incan sites that the local indigenous people refused to approach. He'd ignored their warnings, excavated forbidden temples, and brought back hundreds of artifacts. The expedition members started dying immediately. First was Thomas Reed, the expedition's photographer, who fell from a cliff 3 months after returning. His camera was found next to his body, and the last photo on the roll showed something standing behind him, something that shouldn't have been there, something with too many limbs, and a face that the report described as photographically impossible. Next was Margaret Collins, the team's anthropologist. She died of a mysterious wasting illness that no doctor could diagnose. In her final days, she claimed the artifacts were draining her life force, feeding on her presence. Dr. Ashmore himself lasted 5 years before his complete mental collapse. His asylum records, digitized and stored in the museum's archives, made for disturbing reading. He claimed the artifacts were windows to something else, something that existed outside normal space and time. He said he'd opened doors that should have stayed closed. And now things were coming through. The museum had opened in 1925, a year after Ashmore's final expedition. For 15 years it operated normally. Then the incident started. A curator was found dead in room 7, with no apparent cause. A night guard who walked into the marine biology hall and never came out, they found him 3 days later, drowned, despite the tank being empty. A child on a school tour claimed one of the dinosaur skeletons had moved. She was found dead in her bed that night, eyes open, staring at nothing. The list went on. Dozens of deaths, hundreds of reported unusual incidents. The museum had closed to the public in 2018, but the deaths continued among staff members who worked there. James had been the longest-serving night guard, 3 years. The guard before him had lasted 6 months before walking into room 7 during an off-limit time and never being seen again. His body was never found. I sat back, staring at the screen. The implication was clear. This building was actively dangerous. The artifacts weren't just creepy museum pieces. They were something else, something that killed people and would eventually kill me if I stayed. I should have quit right then. Should have walked out and never looked back. But I needed the money. And more than that, I was curious. I wanted to understand what was really happening here. That curiosity would nearly cost me everything. On my 15th night, everything changed. I was conducting my 4 a.m. walkthrough, the second to last of the shift, when I reached the anthropology hall and immediately knew something was wrong. The display case containing the ceremonial masks was open, not broken, not smashed, just open. The glass door swung wide, as if someone had unlocked it from the inside. And the 13th mask, the one that had appeared out of nowhere, was missing. I felt cold dread settle in my stomach. This was what Dr. Holloway had warned about. Something leaving its display. This required immediate notification. I pulled out my phone and called her. It rang 6 times before she answered, her voice thick with sleep. "What?" "It's Marcus, security office. We have a breach. The display case in anthropology is open, and one of the masks is missing." A pause. Then, very calmly, "Which mask?" "The 13th one. The one that wasn't originally part of the display." Another pause, longer this time. When she spoke again, her voice was different, urgent. "Listen to me very carefully. Lock yourself in the security office. Do not leave for any reason. Do not complete the rest of your walkthrough. I'm on my way. Do you understand?" "Yes, but go. Now." She hung up. I ran back to the security office, locked the door, and pulled the desk chair in front of it as an additional barrier. Then I turned to the monitors. At first, everything looked normal. Empty hallways, still exhibit rooms. But as I watched, I started to notice movement in the anthropology hall feed. Something was walking through the room. It was human-shaped, 2 arms, 2 legs, a head. But it moved wrong, with a jerking, stuttering gait, like stop-motion animation. It would be in one position, then suddenly appear several feet away, then suddenly somewhere else, with no smooth transition between positions. And it was wearing the mask. The feed was black and white, low resolution, but I could see enough. The mask was wooden, carved with an expression of exaggerated joy, a too-wide smile, eyes squinted in manic happiness. But the thing wearing it wasn't joyful. Its body language was predatory, purposeful. It was hunting. I watched it move from room to room, getting closer to the security office with each jump-cut movement. Paleontology, marine biology, and entomology. Each time I looked at a different monitor, it had progressed further. My phone rang. Dr. Holloway. "Is it moving?" she asked without preamble. "Yes, it's heading this way." "The door is locked?" "Yes." "Good. It can't open doors. As long as you stay inside, you're safe. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Whatever you do, don't open the door. Don't respond if it knocks. Don't listen if it speaks. Do you understand?" "What is it?" "A mistake. Something that should have been contained. Just stay in the office." She hung up again. I turned back to the monitors. The figure was in the hallway outside the security office now, just out of view of the door camera. I could see its shadow stretching across the floor. Then it stepped into frame. It was tall, maybe 7 feet, and impossibly thin. The mask covered its face, but I could see exposed skin below it. The skin was gray, withered, like old leather. Its hands were too long, fingers extending into points that might have been claws. It tilted its head, studying the door. Then it raised one hand and knocked, 3 slow, deliberate knocks. I didn't move, didn't breathe, The knocking came again. Then a voice, muffled through the mask but clear enough. "I know you're in there." It was James's voice, exactly his voice, with his accent and speech patterns. "Marcus, it's me. Open the door. Something's wrong with the building. We need to evacuate." I gripped the arms of my chair. It wasn't James. James had quit. This was something else, something wearing his voice like it wore the mask. "Please, Marcus, I'm hurt. I need help." "Just open the door." The voice was perfect. If I hadn't been watching the monitor, seeing the impossible figure standing outside, I would have believed it was really him. When I didn't respond, the voice changed, became Dr. Holloway's voice. "Marcus, this is Dr. Holloway. I need you to open the security office door. There's been a misunderstanding. Everything is fine." Still, I didn't move. The figure studied the door for another moment. Then it spoke in a voice I'd never heard before. Ancient, multilingual, wrong. "You cannot hide forever. We are patient. We have always been patient." It turned and walked away, its movement still stuttering and unnatural. I watched it progress back through the exhibit halls toward room 7. Dr. Holloway arrived 18 minutes later. I heard her unlock the front entrance, heard her footsteps echoing through the building. She knocked on the security office door. 2 quick knocks, then 3, then 1. A pattern. "It's me," she said. "The real me. You can open the door." I checked the monitor. It was her, alone. No masked figure in sight. I opened the door. She looked older than I'd ever seen her, her face lined with exhaustion. "Show me the feeds." I pulled up the footage from the past hour. We watched the masked figure's movement through the building, watched it approach the security office, and watched the entire interaction. "The laughing one," Dr. Holloway said quietly. "It hasn't manifested physically in 15 years. I thought we had it contained." "What is it?" She was quiet for a long moment. Then, "When Dr. Ashmore opened those tombs in Peru, he didn't just find artifacts. He found a doorway, a thin place where our reality meets something else. The artifacts are anchors, keeping that doorway slightly open. And things come through. They take forms, inhabit masks and statues and bones. The laughing one is one of the oldest, one of the strongest. And now it's free in the building. We need to call the police. Get professionals. No, this isn't something police can handle. We need to contain it before dawn, or it will be loose in the city. She headed for the door. Stay here. Watch the monitors. Tell me where it goes. Wait, you can't. But she was already gone, disappearing into the dark hallway. I watched Dr. Holloway on the monitors as she moved through the building. She carried something in her hand. It looked like a book, old and leather-bound. In her other hand was what appeared to be a small knife. She was heading toward room 7. The laughing one was visible on the room 4 camera, standing motionless in the center of the paleontology wing. As Dr. Holloway approached, its head snapped toward the doorway, tracking her movement, despite her being out of view. "It knows you're coming," I said into the phone. She'd called me, keeping the line open so we could communicate. Good. I wanted to know. She entered room 4. The laughing one turned to face her, and even through the grainy security footage, I could see the mask's expression seemed to shift, the smile growing wider, more pronounced. Dr. Holloway opened the book and began reading aloud. I couldn't hear the words through the phone, but I could see the effect. The laughing one jerked backward, its body convulsing like it had been struck. The mask tilted upward as if screaming silently. Then it ran. The movement was impossibly fast. One moment it was in front of Dr. Holloway, the next it was gone, disappearing from the camera's view. I frantically switched between feeds, trying to track it. "It's heading toward the marine biology hall," I said, "moving fast. Keep tracking it, don't lose sight." I found it on the marine biology camera. It stood in front of the empty tank, motionless. Then it did something that made my breath catch. It reached up and removed the mask. I couldn't see what was underneath. The camera angle was wrong, the lighting too dim. But I saw the mask fall to the floor, saw the figure's real head, something that wasn't human, wasn't anything I could describe, turn toward the camera, toward me. The feed went to static. "Camera 7 is down," I reported, trying to keep my voice steady. "Where did it go after that?" "I don't know. The feed cut out." A long pause. Then, "Marcus, I need you to do something. Go to the breaker box in the supply closet next to the security office. There's a red switch labeled Emergency Protocol. Flip it." "What does it do?" "It seals the building. Heavy security doors come down over all exits. Nothing gets in, nothing gets out." "But you're still in here." "I know. Flip the switch. Do it now." I found the breaker box and the red switch. My hand hovered over it. If I flipped this, Dr. Holloway would be trapped inside with that thing. "Dr. Holloway, there has to be another way." "There isn't. If it escapes the building, it will kill people, lots of people. This is the only way to guarantee containment." Her voice was calm, accepting. "Flip the switch, Marcus. That's an order." I flipped it. Immediately, I heard a massive mechanical grinding sound throughout the building. On the monitors, I watched as heavy metal doors descended from the ceiling at every exit point, sealing the building completely. We were locked in. "Good," Dr. Holloway said. "Now I can work without worrying about it escaping. Stay in the security office. Don't leave for any reason." "What are you going to do?" "Finish what should have been done 80 years ago." She hung up. I watched the monitors helplessly as Dr. Holloway moved through the building, still carrying her book and knife. She was heading toward room 7, moving with purpose, but I couldn't see the laughing one anywhere. It had vanished after the camera went dark. Dr. Holloway reached room 7 and unlocked the door. She stepped inside, and I switched to that camera feed, but like before, the room 7 camera showed only a black screen. I waited. 5 minutes. 10. 15. Nothing. At 5:23 a.m., the room 7 door opened. Dr. Holloway emerged, looking exhausted but unharmed. She was alone. The mask and the laughing one were nowhere to be seen. She walked back through the museum slowly, checking each room as she went. Finally, she returned to the security office. Her clothes were dirty, and there were dark stains on her hands that might have been blood. "It's done," she said. "The entity has been returned to its containment. The mask is back in its case." "What happened in there?" "Nothing you need to know about." She moved to the breaker box and flipped the red switch back. The grinding sound returned as the security doors lifted. "Your shift ends in 37 minutes. Complete your final walkthrough, document tonight's events in the logbook, and go home." "Just like that? We don't talk about what just happened?" She looked at me with those magnified eyes. There's nothing to talk about. An artifact was temporarily displaced. It has been secured. The building remains safe. You did your job correctly, and because of that, no one died tonight. That's all that matters. I can't keep working here, not after this. You can and you will. Because now you understand what's at stake. These artifacts can't be destroyed. We've tried. They can't be moved. They're bound to this building. All we can do is contain them, watch them, and prevent them from escaping into the world. That's what the night security position exists for. Not to protect the exhibits, but to protect everyone else from them. She headed for the door, then paused. James lasted 3 years because he followed the rules perfectly. Every hour, every night, no exceptions. You can do the same. Or you can quit and we'll find someone else, someone who might not be as careful, and the next breach might end very differently. She left. I sat alone in the security office, my hands still shaking, and realized she was right. I couldn't quit. Someone had to do this job, and now that I knew what was really at stake, I couldn't walk away. At 5:45 a.m., I began my final walkthrough of the night. The weeks that followed established a new pattern. I learned to anticipate the museum's moods, to recognize when the artifacts were restless and when they were calm. The walkthroughs became a meditation, a ritual that kept both me and the exhibits in our proper places. I learned which artifacts were most dangerous. The watcher in room 7 was always active, always aware, but it stayed in its place as long as I didn't stare at it directly. The masks in anthropology occasionally rearranged themselves, but they rarely left their case after the incident with the laughing one. The thing in the tank still swam through invisible water, but I learned to walk past without looking. Acknowledgement gave them power. Ignoring them kept them contained. Dr. Holloway checked in weekly, reviewing my logs and asking specific questions about changes in the exhibits. She taught me things that weren't in the rules, how to recognize when an artifact was trying to attract my attention, how to clear my mind if I felt something pushing at my thoughts, how to ground myself if I started feeling disconnected from reality. The building tests you, she explained during one of these sessions. It's trying to find weaknesses, ways to get through your defenses. The artifacts aren't mindless. They're intelligent, patient, and they never stop trying. Why don't we just burn the whole place down? We tried. In 1967, the fire department responded to a 3-alarm fire. When they arrived, the building was untouched, but every firefighter who responded died within a month. The building protects itself. It wants to exist, wants to keep its collection, and it will destroy anyone who seriously threatens that existence. I thought about that information for a long time. The museum wasn't just a building full of cursed artifacts. It was something more, a living entity in its own right, with its own intelligence and will to survive. On my 40th night, I met another night guard. His name was David, and he was training to take over the 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. shift, a new position Dr. Holloway had created. 2 guards would provide better coverage, reduce the risk of incidents. David was young, maybe 23, with the nervous energy of someone who desperately needed the money. I recognized myself in him. "Is it really as weird as people say?" he asked during his first training shift. I thought about lying, about telling him it was just an old building with creaky floors and strange sounds, but he deserved the truth. "It's worse," I said. "But if you follow the rules exactly, if you never get curious, never try to understand what you're seeing, you'll be okay." "Probably." "Probably. This job has a high turnover rate. Some people can handle it. Most can't." I handed him the laminated rule card. "Memorize these. Your life might depend on it." We did a walkthrough together. I showed him the route, the checking procedures, and the specific exhibits that needed extra attention. When we reached the marine biology hall, I stopped him before he could look at the tank. "Don't look directly at it," I said. "Not ever. Keep your eyes forward, verify it's still empty in your peripheral vision, and keep moving." "Why? What's in there?" "Something that isn't there. And if you look at it, acknowledge it, it becomes more real, more dangerous." David nodded, but I could see the curiosity in his eyes. I recognized that, too. It was the same curiosity that had made me research the museum's history, the same curiosity that would eventually either break him or turn him into a lifer like me. We completed the walkthrough and returned to the security office. As we entered, I noticed something on one of the monitors, a figure standing in room 7, visible despite the camera supposedly being off. I blinked, and it was gone. Just a glitch. Or maybe not. "Did you see that?" David asked. "See what?" "On the monitor, room 7. Something was there." I looked at him carefully. "You're going to see a lot of things working here. Most of them aren't real. Some of them are. The trick is learning which is which, and more importantly, learning not to care." "That sounds impossible." "It is. But you do it anyway, because the alternative is worse." On my 60th night, someone came to the museum during my shift. I was conducting my 1 a.m. walkthrough when I heard knocking at the front entrance. Not the supernatural knocking I'd grown accustomed to. This was normal human knocking. I checked the monitors. A woman stood at the front door, middle-aged, wearing a coat and carrying a purse. She knocked again, more insistently. I called Dr. Holloway. "There's someone at the front door, a visitor." "This late? What do they want?" "I don't know. Should I ask?" "No, stay away from the door. I'll handle it." She arrived 20 minutes later and spoke to the woman through the locked door. I watched on the monitors as they had an animated conversation. Finally, Dr. Holloway unlocked the door and let the woman inside. They came to the security office together. "Marcus, this is Dr. Sarah Chen," Dr. Holloway said. "She's a researcher studying pre-Incan artifacts. She's received special permission to examine our collection." Dr. Chen smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. She was nervous, fidgeting with her purse strap. "I'm specifically interested in the Ashmore expedition pieces. I've been trying to gain access for years." "At 1 a.m.? I asked. "The artifacts are more accessible at night," she said carefully. "Their properties are easier to observe when the sun is down." Dr. Holloway shot me a look that said, "Don't ask questions." "Marcus will escort you to room 7. He'll stay with you during your examination. You have 2 hours. I work better alone. Those are the terms. Take them or leave." Dr. Chen nodded reluctantly. I led her through the museum, following the standard route. She walked quickly, barely glancing at the exhibits in other rooms. She was focused entirely on reaching room 7. When we arrived, I unlocked the 3 locks and opened the door. The cold air rushed out, and Dr. Chen inhaled sharply. "Incredible," she whispered. "The energy here is incredible." We entered room 7. The artifacts sat in their usual positions, 47 pieces, all accounted for. Dr. Chen moved among them, examining each one carefully, but not touching. She pulled out a notebook and began writing observations. I stayed by the door, watching her and watching the exhibits. The watcher's dozens of stone eyes seemed to track her movement. The other figures appeared more animated than usual, like they were aware of her presence. "These shouldn't exist," Dr. Chen said, studying a carved stone tablet. "The site they came from was sealed by the indigenous people over 1,000 years ago. They knew what was buried there, what it could do. Dr. Ashmore should never have opened those tombs." "What's buried there?" She looked at me. "Have you ever heard the phrase, thin places? Locations where the barrier between our world and others is weak? That's what Ashmore found. Not just artifacts, but a doorway. These pieces are keys, anchors, holding that doorway partially open." "Open to what?" "To something that exists outside our normal reality. Something old and patient and hungry. The indigenous people called it many names, but the translation I prefer is the waiting dark. It's been trying to push through for millennia. The artifacts give it purchase in our world." She moved to the watcher and stood before it, studying its multiple eyes. "This one is special. It's not just a key, it's a window. Through those eyes, the waiting dark can see into our world, can watch, can learn." As she spoke, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. One of the watcher's stone eyes was open. Not carved open, actually open, with something dark and wet visible inside. "Dr. Chen, I know why Dr. Holloway keeps this museum closed," she continued, ignoring me. "I know about the deaths, the incidents, but what she doesn't understand is that containment isn't enough. These artifacts are getting stronger. The doorway is opening wider. Eventually, something will come through that can't be contained." "We need to leave," I said. "Now." She turned to face me, and her expression had changed. The nervousness was gone, replaced by something else, something calculating. "I'm not here to examine the artifacts, Marcus. I'm here to destroy them. It's the only way to close the doorway permanently." She pulled something from her purse, a small device with a digital timer. A bomb. "Dr. Holloway was right not to trust me," she said, setting the device on the floor. "But she's wrong about containment. These things need to be destroyed, and if that means destroying the building and everyone in it, that's a price I'm willing to pay." She ran. I stood frozen for half a second, then my training kicked in. I grabbed the device, 3 minutes on the timer, and ran after her. Dr. Chen was faster than I expected, already halfway down the corridor. I shouted for her to stop, but she kept running toward the exit. 2 minutes, 40 seconds. I couldn't disarm the bomb, I didn't know how, but I knew where it couldn't be, in room 7, where it would destroy the artifacts and potentially release whatever the waiting dark was. I ran to the marine biology hall and threw the device into the empty tank. The thick glass walls might contain the blast. Might. 2 minutes. I pulled out my phone and called Dr. Holloway. Chen was a plant. She left a bomb. It's in the tank in marine biology. You need to evacuate David and get away from the building. What about you? I'm getting out. Just go. I ran for the front entrance. Dr. Chen had apparently activated the emergency lockdown before planting the bomb. The heavy security doors were descending. I could see Dr. Chen on the other side, watching me with cold satisfaction as the doors came down. 1 minute. I wasn't going to make it. I dove for the gap, sliding across the marble floor just as the security door slammed shut behind me. I rolled to my feet and kept running. Out the front door, across the street, as far as I could get. 30 seconds. Dr. Holloway emerged from a side entrance with David. We met on the opposite sidewalk, watching the building. 10 seconds. The explosion, when it came, was muffled. I saw windows light up from inside, saw the building shake. But the structure held. The thick walls and solid construction contained the blast. For a moment, everything was still. Then the screaming started. Not human screaming. Something else, something that came from inside the building, from dozens or hundreds of throats. The sound was so wrong, so fundamentally disturbing, that I felt my sanity trying to reject it. Windows shattered, not from the explosion, but from the inside, as something pushed against them. Shadows moved in the broken openings, shapes that were almost human, but fundamentally wrong. "What's happening?" David asked, his voice cracking. Dr. Holloway's face was ashen. The tank. It was an anchor point, a containment system for something in the marine biology hall. By destroying it, the bomb didn't close the doorway, it opened it wider. Something emerged from a broken window on the 3rd floor. It was massive, with too many limbs and a head that split open in directions that hurt to look at. It clung to the side of the building, and I realized with horror that it was just the first. More were coming. Dr. Chen stood across the street, watching her handiwork with wide, horrified eyes. Whatever she'd thought would happen, this wasn't it. "We need to call," David started. "No one can help with this," Dr. Holloway said. She pulled out her phone and made a call. "This is Dr. Holloway at the Ashmore Museum. Authorization code Theta-79. We have a full breach. I repeat, full breach. Initiate protocol midnight." She hung up and looked at us. "They'll be here in 15 minutes. Until then, we run." "Who will be here? Who did you call?" "People who deal with situations like this. People who've been preparing for this possibility since 1925. She grabbed David and pulled him toward her car. "Get in, now!" I took one last look at the museum. More shapes were emerging from the broken windows now, climbing down the walls, dropping to the street. The screaming continued, overlapping voices in languages that predated human speech. And in the window of room 7, I saw the Watcher. Its dozens of stone eyes were all open now, all watching. And through them, I could see something else looking back, something vast and dark and infinitely patient. The waiting dark had waited long enough. We drove away as fast as Dr. Holloway's car could manage. Behind us, the shapes spread into the city, hunting. Dr. Holloway drove to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. We pulled into a loading bay and she killed the engine. For a long moment, none of us spoke. "What have we done?" David whispered. "We didn't do anything," Dr. Holloway said. "Dr. Chen did. And now we deal with the consequences." A black van pulled up beside us. Men in tactical gear emerged, moving with practiced efficiency. One of them approached our car, a stern-looking man in his 50s with close-cropped gray hair. "Dr. Holloway, give me a sitrep." "Full breach. Primary containment failed. Estimate 30 to 50 entities loose in the immediate area. The Watcher has awakened. The doorway is fully open." The man cursed. "How long do we have?" "I don't know. Hours, maybe, before they spread too far to contain." "We'll implement Protocol Midnight. You and your people need to stay here. This is above your pay grade now." "Wait," I said. "What is Protocol Midnight?" The man looked at me with something like pity. "Containment Failure Protocol. We seal the area, evacuate civilians under the guise of a gas leak, and neutralize the threat using specialized equipment." "You can kill them?" "We can send them back, close the doorway. But it requires getting into the building, into Room 7, and performing a ritual that, well, it's not pretty, and it has a high casualty rate." "Let me help," I said. The words came out before I'd thought them through, but once spoken, I knew they were right. "I know the building. I know the layout, the exhibits, and where everything is. I can guide your team." "Marcus, no," Dr. Holloway started. "This is my fault," I said. "I let Dr. Chen into Room 7. I put the bomb in the tank. I need to fix this." The man studied me. "You ever been in combat?" "No." "Ever killed anything?" "No." "Then you'd be a liability. My team knows what they're doing. They don't know the museum. They don't know which artifacts are doorways and which are just objects. They don't know about the tank, or the Watcher, or the rules that keep you alive in there." I met his eyes. "You need me." He considered for a long moment. Then, "Gear him up. He comes with Team 3. 20 minutes later, I was wearing tactical gear that didn't quite fit, and holding a weapon I barely knew how to use. The team leader, a woman named Captain Torres, briefed us in the van on the way back to the museum. "The ritual requires 3 components," she explained. "First, we need to destroy the Watcher. That's the primary anchor. Second, we need to seal Room 7 permanently, using specialized compounds. Third, we need to survive long enough to do both." "What about the entities that already escaped?" someone asked. "Sweep teams are handling them. Our job is just the source. Close the doorway, and the entities will lose their connection to this reality. They'll fade in a few hours." We arrived at the museum to find chaos. Police had established a perimeter, and emergency services were evacuating nearby buildings. The official story was a gas leak, but I could see the fear in people's eyes. They knew something worse was happening. The museum itself looked like something from a nightmare. All the windows were broken, and a strange, greenish light pulsed from inside. Shadows moved across the walls in patterns that hurt to look at, and the sound, that terrible screaming, continued without pause. 3 teams, Captain Torres said. Team 1 secures the entrance. Team 2 holds the route. Team 3, that's us, goes to Room 7. Stay tight, stay focused, and do not look directly at anything that moves. Understood? We understood. The entrance was worse than I expected. The marble lobby I'd walked through hundreds of times was transformed. The walls were covered in something organic and wet. The display cases had burst open, their contents scattered or missing entirely. And the smell. Decay and something else, something that had no earthly equivalent. Team 1 established a position at the entrance while we moved deeper. I led the way, following the familiar route despite how different everything looked. The walls seemed to pulse with that greenish light. I could hear movement in the other rooms, things shuffling and breathing and waiting. In the paleontology wing, we encountered the first entity. It was massive, constructed from multiple dinosaur skeletons fused in impossible configurations. It turned toward us, bones grinding, and let out a shriek that shattered the few remaining display cases. The team opened fire. I don't know what kind of ammunition they were using, but it wasn't normal bullets. Each round hit with a flash of blue light, and where they struck, the entity's bones turned to ash. It fell apart, collapsing into a pile of dust. We kept moving. The marine biology hall was the worst. The tank had shattered completely, and something massive had emerged from it, something that had been trapped in that space for decades, growing stronger. It wasn't there now, but I could see the trail it had left, a path of slime and destruction leading deeper into the building. "That's what we're fighting," I said. "That came from the tank." "Then we'd better move fast," Captain Torres said, "before it decides to come back." We reached the corridor leading to room 7. The door was open, hanging off its hinges. The cold air that always emanated from the room was now a freezing wind, and through the doorway I could see that greenish light pulsing in rhythm with the screaming. "This is it," I said. "The Watcher is in there. It'll be at the center of the room. Stay behind us. We'll handle the entity. You just point us to the target." We entered room 7. The artifacts had changed. All 47 pieces were glowing with that strange light, and they'd rearranged themselves into a pattern, a circle around the Watcher, which stood at the center. The stone figure was different now, larger, more detailed, and all those carved eyes were open, blinking independently, each one looking in a different direction. Through those eyes I could see somewhere else, not another room, but another reality entirely. A place of darkness and waiting things, all pushing against the barrier, trying to force their way through. "Target acquired," Captain Torres said. "Light it up." The team opened fire. Blue flashes filled the room as their specialized rounds struck the Watcher. Pieces of stone exploded off the figure, but it didn't fall. Instead, it turned toward us, and when it did, I saw that it had grown a mouth. It smiled. Then it spoke, and its voice was every voice I'd ever heard in the museum, all overlapping. "Too late. The door is open. The waiting dark comes through." The other artifacts in the circle began to crack, splitting open like eggs. Things emerged from inside them, shadows with substance, creatures that existed in too many dimensions at once, entities that my mind struggled to process. "Fall back!" Captain Torres shouted, but I didn't fall back. I ran forward, directly toward the Watcher. I heard the team shouting behind me, felt bullets whiz past, but I didn't stop. I'd spent 60 nights in this building, 60 nights learning its rhythms, understanding its rules, and I'd learned one important thing. The artifacts had power, but they also had weaknesses. They needed to be seen to be real. They needed to be acknowledged to have substance. I closed my eyes. Without my gaze, the Watcher lost definition. I could still hear it, still feel its presence, but it was weaker, less solid. I moved by memory, by feel, reaching out until my hands found cold stone. "You cannot unmake us," the Watcher said directly into my mind. "We have always existed. We will always exist." "Maybe," I said, "but not here, not in my world." I opened my eyes and looked directly at it, really looked, seeing every detail, every carved eye, every impossible feature. And as I looked, I thought about what it really was. Not a monster, not a god, just a piece of stone carved by human hands over 1,000 years ago. An object, nothing more. The watcher flickered. "We are more than stone," it insisted, but its voice was weaker now. "No," I said, "you're exactly stone. You're old, and you're scary, and you've killed people. But you're just an object that people feared, and fear gave you power. But I don't fear you anymore. I understand you, and that's worse for you than any weapon." I picked up one of the team's discarded weapons and fired point blank into the watcher's center mass. The statue exploded. The moment it shattered, everything changed. The greenish light vanished. The other artifacts stopped glowing. The entities that had emerged from them dissolved like smoke. And most importantly, the doorway, that terrible window into the waiting dark, slammed shut. The screaming stopped. In the sudden silence, I could hear Captain Torres behind me. "What the hell did you just do?" "My job," I said. "I contained the breach." The Ashmore Museum burned down 3 days later. Official cause? Electrical fire. Everyone knew better, but no one said anything. They found Dr. Chen's body in an alley 2 blocks from the museum. Official cause of death? Heart attack. But I'd seen the security footage. I'd seen what had found her in the dark. Some prices have to be paid. David quit the day after Protocol Midnight. Smart kid. He found work at a normal security company and never looked back. Dr. Holloway retired. She sent me a letter a month later. "Thank you for finishing what should have been done in 1925. The building is gone, the artifacts are destroyed, and the doorway is closed. Whatever the waiting dark was, it can't reach us now. You did what generations of guards could not. You survived. As for me, I got a new job. Same company that Captain Torres works for, same organization that implements Protocol Midnight. Turns out, there are more places like the Ashmore Museum scattered around the world. Thin places. Buildings that house things that shouldn't exist. And someone needs to watch them. Someone needs to stand guard through the dark hours, following rules, maintaining containment, and preventing breaches. I'm good at that. Last week, they sent me to evaluate a situation at an abandoned hospital in Nevada. Something in the basement, they said. Something that only comes out at night. They needed someone to assess the threat level, determine if containment was possible, or if they'd need to implement another Protocol Midnight. I arrived at sunset and walked through the empty corridors alone. The building was old, full of shadows and strange sounds. Most people would have been terrified. I felt right at home. Because I learned something important during my time at the Ashmore Museum. The things that hide in dark places are terrifying, yes. They're dangerous and deadly and older than civilization. But they follow rules. They have patterns. They have weaknesses. And if you're patient enough, careful enough, and brave enough to look directly at the monsters without blinking, you can beat them. You just have to be willing to stand guard in the dark, every night, without fail, forever. If you made it this far, You're braver than most of the guards who worked at the Ashmore Museum. But let me ask you something. Would you take Marcus's job? $28 an hour to face the unknown. Could you follow the rules when the voices of your loved ones beg you to open the door? Drop your answer in the comments below. And if you're wondering what happened at that hospital in Nevada, well, that's a story for another time. If you enjoyed this descent into darkness, smash that like button. It helps more people discover these stories. And if you want more tales of night shifts gone wrong, cursed objects, and places that should have stayed closed, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. I've got stories about a lighthouse keeper who wasn't alone, a storage unit that charges rent for things that aren't human, and a hiking trail where the path behind you disappears. Comment on what story you want to listen to next. I'll be watching. Some jobs pay well for a reason. Some buildings stay closed for a reason. And some stories are better heard than experienced. Until next time, keep the lights on. You never know what's watching from the dark. Stay safe out there.